original meeting for what is now the National Football League took place on September 17, 1920 at Ralph Hayes Huntmobile Showroom in Canton, Ohio. There weren't enough chairs for Hay and George Hallis and the other founding fathers, so they sat on the fenders and the running boards of the cars. The 10 Commandments of Football. 1. Football is a wonderful game. There's blocking, tackling, and much, much more. Be enthusiastic. 2. Weddings, births, and vacations should take place during the off seasons. 3. Remember the Huntmobile in the original meeting. 4. All previous games are preparation for the next one. 5. Obey the personal conduct policy. 6. Work for the good of the league. 7. Win championships with sportsmanship. 8. You shall not criticize the officials. 9. You shall not covet other teams' players or coaches. 10. Game times are tentative and subject to flexible scheduling. If the apostles had played football, they would have been a great team. Peter would have been the quarterback. Andrew was Peter's brother, who would have been used to playing catch in the yard. Let's put Andrew at end. James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John were known as the sons of thunder. They would have been the running backs. We don't know much about Philip, Bartholomew, James, the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, and Simon the Cananean, so they would have been the linemen. Doubting Thomas would always be encouraging his teammates to play harder. Let's put him at middle linebacker. If Mike Singletary had been an apostle, the other apostles wouldn't have slept in the Garden of Gethsemane. Matthew, the tax collector, was used to dealing with money. Let's put him at end like George Hallis. Matthias, who replaced Judas, would have been the kicker. Paul would have been the writer, like me. He wrote a lot of letters, even though the Corinthians were the only ones who ever wrote back. What did William Shakespeare's father say to William Shakespeare? Make plays. My great-great-grandfather, J.P. McCaskey, was a teacher and a principal for over 50 years at Boys High School in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In 1867, he wrote the song Jolly Old St. Nicholas. After he had died, the school was renamed after him, McCaskey High School. Each graduate of the school gave a portrait of himself with this inscription: "The best of men that ever were about him was a patient sufferer, a soft, meek, tranquil spirit, first true gentleman that ever breathed." He wrote that about Jesus. Never even met him. My grandfather, George Hallis, started the Chicago Bears in 1920. He played on the team for 10 years, coached the team for 40 years. He was the owner of the team for 62 years until he died in 1983 at the age of 88. He left the team to his family. We are trying to extend his legacy. That legacy has two parts: win championships and help other people. I started going to Bears games when I was 5. My brothers and I sat on an army blanket next to the Bears bench while my grandfather coached. My grandfather once said to an official, "No man is completely worthless. You can always serve as a horrible example." After the games, we waited for Grandpa outside the Bears locker room. Regardless of the outcome of the game, he said to each of us, "Hi, pal, how about a kiss for Grandpa?" Sometimes I was allowed to accompany my grandfather to the Pink Poodle press room at Wrigley Field, where he met with reporters after the games. Once, after he had let out a string of profanities after a particularly painful loss, he remembered that I was sitting next to him. And he said, "Now fellas, all that was off the record." I started going to Bears training camps when I was 7. George Blanda taught us how to kick. Bill George taught us how to play linebacker. Bill Wade taught us how to play quarterback. When my grandfather coached the Bears, players had to start training camp with the Hallis Mile. That's how I got interested in running. As busy as he was, he knew the value of daily exercise. His motivational slogan was, "Never go to bed a loser." When Grandpa received the Sword of Loyola in 1979, he said, "60 years ago, I offered my heart and my helmet to the Lord. My heart is still beating and my helmet still fits. I pray that divine coach finds me worthy to be on his first team." The last 5 years of Grandpa's life, his grandchildren took him out to dinner on his birthday. On Wednesday, February 2nd, 1983, his 88th birthday, we should have known that something was amiss because he told us that he did not swear anymore. He also said, "May the good Lord grant all of you as long and as wonderful a life as I have had." Before the Bears play a game, Mass and chapel service are available in the team hotel. We try to get the Pope because we think our games are important. We offer $100 and 2 tickets. My friend Chuck Simpson said he probably doesn't know who to bring. When the Bears are in the Super Bowl, Cardinal George will say Mass for us. We will talk with the Pope. If the Pope is available, they will celebrate. True or false? Martin Luther King Jr. played quarterback for Morehouse College. True. True or false? His team was constantly penalized for delay of game because he kept making speeches in the huddle. False. For the first 6 years of my parents' marriage, I was not here. I only know the legend. 3 wise men from the East, Bert Bell, Bill Lennox, and Art Rooney, followed the bright star until they found my father at the University of Pennsylvania Theater. They approved of him, much to the despair of Chief Papa Bear. My mother's Indian name was Laughing Bird. My father put my mother on a donkey, and they fled to Baltimore, and they got married. In lieu of money, they gave the donkey to the priest. More than 10 months after the wedding, my brother Mike was born in Pennsylvania. He was wrapped in an army blanket and laid in an open footlocker. Across the Atlantic Ocean, Hitler had captured much of Europe. My father had heard that Hitler's ultimate plan was the capture of Ireland. So my father defeated Hitler with a sling and 5 smooth stones. On my father's return to Pennsylvania, he met my brother Tim, who cried and cried at the introduction. My sister Ellen was also born in Pennsylvania. When my mother was pregnant with me, the family moved to Illinois. Mary, Ned, Ann, George, Rich, Ryan, and Joseph were also born in Illinois. My parents wove a pattern of hard work and discipline for the lives of their children. They stitched this pattern with love. My mother always found it amusing when someone asked her how much hired help she had. probably the reason my father nicknamed her Laughing Girl. She did all the cooking and laundry and housework. The only real time she got a break was when she went into the hospital to have another baby. During those refreshing interludes, Mrs. Passarelli took care of us. Instead of dinners of hamburgers or hot dogs, she prepared homemade pizza or spaghetti and meatballs. While waving a wooden spoon covered with meat sauce, she would yell, "You kids, stop fighting!" She never had to tell on us because my parents knew us very well. There were many fights in our home, and my parents used belts, fly swatters, spatulas, and pizza paddles as instruments of discipline. My father's discipline was thought to be too severe. We buried one of his watches in the vegetable garden. Our version of family planning was to have the children born during the Chicago Bears off-season. We had 7 victories, 4 ties. Education was very important in our home, and chores were an essential part of our training. Grass had to be mowed, and snow had to be shoveled. Dog pens had to be cleaned, and vegetable gardens had to be cultivated. My father was not a straw boss. He worked harder than any of his sons. When he cultivated a vegetable garden with a pitchfork and found one of his watches, he could see the humor in the situation. All of us were raised with discipline and love, and each of us was a special case. One of the things I really appreciated about my father is that he never gave up on his children. There were times when we didn't want to work in the garden. My father encouraged us to do it anyway. When I was a boy, I didn't always appreciate the change of seasons and the cycle of nature. My father said, in the summer, we get ready for winter. In the winter, we get ready for summer. I wanted to get married when I was in 8th grade because my parents had a great marriage. Sheila Quinn said that I should dance with other girls. That was in 1963. My parents' marriage was in its 20th orbit. When I was a high school freshman, I didn't go to the Bears' 1963 NFL championship game because I had basketball practice. And I used that as an illustration to my sons as to how dedicated they should be to their teams. They said, "Dad, you made a mistake." When I was a high school sophomore, my writing teacher, Father Sandinato, said to me, "McCaskey, you have a unique writing talent. You should develop it." I replied, "Father, I have to practice." When I was a high school junior, I rode my bike 25 miles from Des Plaines to Wheaton to see Louise Raymond. She wasn't home. In 1966, I went to the Bears training camp at St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana, with my high school football teammate Ken Powers, my brother Ned, and my brother George. At the start of the visit, Grandpa called us over to his golf cart after practice. He gave us some pocket money. When tight end Mike Ditka observed the transaction, he came over to participate. Mike asked, "Hey, Coach, how about some of that for me?" Grandpa replied, "Never mind." His favorite parable was the one about the workers in the vineyard. When I was a high school senior, I was an All-American quarterback in a 4.37 mile. While playing catcher in the summer after graduation, I had a lot of pass balls. When my father asked me why, I said, "I can't follow the ball." On August 28, 1967, my eye doctor, George Jessen, asked me how much my football career meant to me. I said, "It means a lot to me." He asked, does it mean so much to you that you'd risk losing your sight? Well, I know. Because of severe eye problems, I can no longer play contact sports. Ever since that day, I've tried to be nice to everyone. My father said the steel of manhood is tempered in the fire of adversity. Everybody has something wrong with them. Everyone's handicap is different because all of us are unique. When we are strong in an area in which others are weak, we are our brother's keeper. In the fall of 1971, instead of playing quarterback for the University of Notre Dame, I had an essay and a poem published in Cadence, a literary magazine from Loyola University, Chicago. Here's a later version of the poem. It's called Maturiosity. When we strive and thrive for excellence rather than rationalize mediocrity, and can realize we are no better than anyone else, and certainly no worse. When we know the sun will appear after an eclipse, and know that apathy is the opposite of love and not hate, and not be self-centered so we listen to others. When we can dream positively and think actively so that we can assist friends rather than handicap them, and be grateful to the good God for our natural gifts, when we can have people take us earnestly through a feeling of duty and a sense of humor, and yet be unique and make our presence felt without being obnoxious. When foes goad us into prudence rather than stupefy us into resignation, when we are strong with faith in humanity rather than aggressive in fear of it, when we can maintain a belief in the last flower and the wild flag, and also play the trumpet of the swan to catch the white deer, peace. Once he had spoken his mind, the issue was forgotten as far as he was concerned. He lived to be 88 years old, and he often said, life is too short for grudges. One day he called me into his office. He said, get a master's degree. I asked, will you pay for it? He said, yes. It was a very short meeting. I went to DePaul University at night during the off seasons, and he got a master's degree in the interdisciplinary studies of business, writing, and performing. In 1977, he sent me a wonderful note. Long ago, I determined that work exceeds talent. Work every day, by writing every day, make me even more proud than I am of you. Love, George. He wanted me to call him George, but I felt uncomfortable. My mother was very much against it, so I went back to calling him Grandpa. During Easter week of 1977, the television movie Jesus of Nazareth was aired. For Easter Sunday dinner, I drove my grandfather to my parents' home. After dinner, I suggested that we watch the final installment of Jesus of Nazareth. After the program, Grandpa said to me, thank you for having us watch that. In 1981, we had a half-mile run to start training camp. One player, Chris Haynes, finished ahead of me. He was later cut. In 1982, I received a promotion. For my 33rd birthday, my Uncle Jim gave me permission to date. We had a 1.5 mile run to start training camp. After I had finished first, Walter Payton said to me, I tried to stay with you. And then I said, that boy is crazy. That made all the training worthwhile. The players later went unstruck. Different tests. As a 5'10" 8th grader, I had to choose between basketball and speed skating. Basketball had cheerleaders. After high school and only 3 more inches, I had to give up football because of eye problems, so I ran cross country. After 2 seasons, I had to give up cross country because of allergy problems, so I wrote humor. After 10 years, I became immune to many allergies, but not kryptonite. So I started running again. My test was easier than Job's. His was essay, mine was multiple choice. After 9 months of prayer, I met Gretchen Wagle on Super Bowl Sunday, 1983. We met through mutual friends, the Bradleys and the Swiders, and we often reenact the crime. I called her the next night and said, I have a challenge for you. My parents are celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary next Saturday night. I'd like you to attend. She said, that really is a challenge. I accept. A few months later, in May, I received a raise. When I thanked my father, I said, now I can afford to get married. He asked, are you thinking about that? I replied, yes, I am. He said, well, Mrs. Sifferman is putting her house up for sale. Maybe you ought to take a look at it. The Siffermans and the McCaskey's grew up on the same Stratford Road block in Des Plaines, the city of destiny. When I thanked my mother for the raise, I said, now I can afford to get married. She demanded, you mean you weren't making enough before to get married? I said, of course it was, Mom. That was just a little joke. On Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, Gretchen and I took a close look at the Sifferman house. It served its purpose. After the tour, Gretchen asked me, why are you looking for a house? I crossed my mouth at the back of my right hand and muttered, in case you want to get married. She accepted my invitation. On Memorial Day, my mother asked me, why are you looking for a house? My mother and my wife are a lot alike. I replied, because Gretchen and I are talking about getting married. When my mother stopped crying with joy, she asked me, how old is she anyway? I replied, she's 30. She only looks 18. My mother gave us her mother's wedding ring. This was a great surprise, a marvelous delight, and an outward sign that she approved of the idea. On June 26th, a special day, because it was the anniversary of Grandma Min's birthday, Gretchen and I called on Grandpa. He was convalescing and looking frail for the first time in his life. He had purchased the ring I was giving Gretchen over 60 years ago for Grandma Min. He said, I bought it for $250 in a pawn shop. I wanted to make sure it was over a carat, yet I wouldn't have paid $750 for it. At our wedding rehearsal at the College Church in Wheaton on Friday, March 2nd, 1984, my father held a huge urn in his left hand and a large Bible in his right hand. Then he walked up to the choir loft, faced all of us, and said, I approve of this marriage. When Gretchen and I married each other, we wanted it to be a good witness. Christ was the center of the ceremony. As I stood before Father Nevins and Pastor Gordon, I thought, this is how it's going to be on the day of judgment. I better be a loving husband. After I got married, there was no longer any need for the Bears cheerleaders. During the 1985 season, Gretchen and I were trying to get pregnant. When we were unsuccessful, I knew it wasn't my fault, so we had my wife checked. She had an ovarian cyst. On Monday, December 2nd, the Bears played the Miami Dolphins in Miami. The Bears lost 38-24. That was our only defeat. The next morning, the cyst was removed. We could try again to get pregnant after the Super Bowl. In preparation for the Super Bowl, we camped on the Mississippi River near the Mark Twain Courtyard. Many of us visited Bourbon Street, where there was a great need for missionary work. On our walks, we sang, "What a friend we have in Jesus." On Sunday, January 26, 1986, the Bears won Super Bowl 20. Exactly 9 months later, my first son, Ed, was born. He reported 2 days early. We felt that showed good initiative. He was born Sunday, October 26, 1986, right before Kevin Butler kicked a field goal against the Detroit Lions at Soldier Field. The Bears won 13-7. We watched the game in the birthing room. If I die before my wife does, I hope that she gets buried again, but I don't want my successor to wear my Super Bowl ring. That goes to my son Tom. My son Ed has my father's Super Bowl ring. All of you are witnesses. On Tuesday, September 9, 1987, we moved into our home in Lake Forest. The players later went on strike. On many September 9th at 6:30 p.m., we changed the net on our basketball hoop. All of you are invited. Now we have 3 sons. Ed, who is married to Elizabeth, Tom, and James. They were named after my father and his brothers in the same birth order. On November 25th, 1993, Thanksgiving, Bears beat the Lions 10-6 in Pontiac, Michigan. My Super Bowl ring was stolen. We were not home at the time, but we were embarrassed because the house was messy. Thanks to great police work, we got the ring back a few days later. None of you were suspects. As soon as my sons got out of their cribs, I had them switching hands on the dribble. For several years, I didn't want to coach my sons on their sports teams because I coached them a lot at home. It's still a game of courtesy and grammar. I wanted them to get a different perspective. Besides, every time they did something right in the game, I'd want to call timeout and shellac the ball. When my sons were in 7th and 8th grade, I was one of their football coaches. I was an expert for a long time, then I became a coach. Before most games, I said to my sons, "Good luck, do your best, because God doesn't grade on a curve. If you do your best, you're a winner, regardless of the score." When my son Ed was in 8th grade, we were 2nd place. When my son Tom was in 8th grade, we were 1st place. When my son James was in 8th grade, we were 1st place. Tommy Reese was our best quarterback. And he played quarterback for the University of Notre Dame. I gave him a post-game quote that he never used. I wanted him to say, "I was very well coached in junior high." I taught him what Bill Wade taught me, footwork and follow-through. I also taught him to be a servant leader like Jesus, to wash the feet of his apostles. My goal as a sports parent was to show interest without meddling. Any playing time was a great opportunity. I took notes at my son's games. My approach was, you were given this much playing time, and this is what you did with it. I provided accountability and encouragement. I showed my notes to my sons, but I didn't bother their coaches. Taking notes at the games helped keep me quiet. Then I didn't have as much time to coach or officiate from the stands. I think the worst thing I ever yelled at an official was, "Jesus died for your sins." All previous games were preparation for the next one. I've also insisted that my sons go to faith-based schools on every level: grade school, high school, college, and university. We want to win championships, and we want to get to heaven. After the Bears had qualified for Super Bowl 41, I was tempted to call my former girlfriends and say, if you had married me, you would have gone to the Super Bowl. Then I remembered that after Jesus rose from the dead, he didn't taunt the people who had rejected him. When I started working for the Bears, my hair was brown, curly, and thick. Now my hair is white, straight, and thin. God is protecting my marriage. I'm still good looking. I've had the good fortune to be associated with the Bears all my life. In the process, I've learned how to appreciate it and cope with it. The football business is an emotional roller coaster. God is constant. Since I am Catholic, I attend St. Mary's Church in Lake Forest, a city of trees. Because my wife is Gretchen is Protestant, I escort her to Christ Church in Lake Forest. As a result of going to both churches, I have a more abundant life. Catholic homilies are short, Protestant sermons are long. Catholics sing 2 or 3 verses of a hymn. Protestants sing every verse 2 or 3 times. Protestants have excellent children's nurseries. Gretchen and I are also active in Bible studies. You may have read about my wife in Proverbs 31. Verses 10 through 31 describe the ideal wife. When I need a break from my wife's efforts to improve me, I say, that's enough reformation for a while. Her only fault is that she tells me how to drive. After she apologizes to me, I say, that's all right, that's okay, we'll stay married anyway. There are 1,328 chapters in the Bible. If we read 26 Bible chapters a week, we can read the Bible in 51 weeks and have a week off for Christmas break. We can use that week to write thank you notes for our Christmas gifts. When we need to know the truth, we need to read the Bible. We can read the newspapers for information. We can read the Bible for inspiration. As one out of many Bears inheritors, I have prayerfully considered the future of the team. Here's what I have discerned. George Hallis was my grandfather, and that's a great legacy. I work for the Bears, and that's a great opportunity. I have it made because Christ died for my sins, which we don't have time to discuss right now. I believe that God has a plan for everyone and for every family. We have the freedom to be obedient. I think that God's plan for me is to work for the Bears and choose to be obedient. God gave me faith, a wonderful family, and a great legacy. As a mature Boy Scout, I feel prepared. I hope that we never sell the team, even though that would give us a lot of money. Satan offered Jesus all the kingdoms of the world. Waltons never sold Walton's Mountain. From Robert Pinsky's essay, Responsibilities of the Poet, we know this. So one great task we have to answer for is the keeping of an ark that we did not invent, but were given, so that others who come after us can have it if they want it, as free to choose it and change it as we have been. And the same responsibility applies to our Bears legacy. With God's faith, I tried to be obedient to His plan for my life. With God's hope, I tried to be a voice of encouragement. With God's love, I tried to exemplify Jesus. Sports Faith International recognizes people who are successful in sports while leading exemplary lives. We honor high school, college, professional, and Olympic athletes, coaches, and teams. In his steps. We are not called to walk on water, or change water into wine, or multiply loaves and fishes, or raise the dead, or be scourged at the pillar, or walk to Calvary or the cross on which to be crucified. We are not called to do what is impossible for us. Christ performed all those heavenly deeds at a 3-year pace. It is for us to follow in his steps, live for righteousness without being self-righteous. Moving on. In relation to the parable of the prodigal son, I have been the younger son. I have been rebellious. I have been the older son. I have been resentful. Now my goal is to be the father. Forgive others as I have been forgiven. When I was a child, there was a series of books called vision books. They were about saints and other wonderful people. My mother gave us these books for ourselves and for our friends when we were invited to their birthday parties. My 2 favorite books in this series were Champions in Sports and Spirit and More Champions in Sports and Spirit. Regardless of what happens on the field, let's behave like champions in sports and spirit. Let's not analyze, let's not denigrate, let's not second guess. Let's not diagnose injuries before we've read the x-rays. Let sportsmanship prevail. John Wooden used to say, win with humility, lose with grace. Dear baby, we are 4 championships behind the Green Bay Packers, so please don't dawdle too long. We need your help. We want to win championships with sportsmanship. We do good works quietly for God's glory. We fear God and we respect our opponents. We are trying to keep the Bears going until the second coming. We work diligently and we trust God for the results. Like the Magi who follow the great star, we go forward in faith. We are grateful for at least the following. God created a wonderful world in 6 days. Jesus died for our sins, including fumbles. When we need the Holy Spirit, He is there. He is even there when we think that we don't need Him. We are hopeful that the world will not end until the Bears have the most championships. Instead of the Super Bowl spy of a player saying that he's going to Disney World, he could say that he's going to church or mosque or temple. After the presentation of the trophy, the second coming will be a great post-game show. We want to play our games with cooperation. It's like an Amish barn raising. We go to church, Bible study, and have daily devotions. Our mandate is to love God and each other. In our attempts to love, we are often funny. Alice Hall is a place of work and not a den of thieves. It is a halfway house to heaven. Instead of saying, please be quiet, we say, please become a mime. We give away the credit and we take the blame. We criticize privately and we praise publicly. Instead of singing as soloists, we sing as a chorus. We provide accountability and positive reinforcement for each other. From William Bennett's book, The Moral Compass, we know that Goethe once said that you must labor to possess what you have inherited. If we are not grateful for our gifts and opportunities, we are not likely to value them. And if we do not value them, we are not likely to work hard to preserve them and improve them. If you know some people who are not Bear fans, don't be discouraged. Some of the greatest Christians started out as atheists. Jesus forgave a good thief. All they have to do is repent. The sports prayer. Bitterness is spiritual cancer. Forgiveness is spiritual rapture. Whether as a reminder that God is the boss, the Spirit strengthens us even after a loss. Jesus Christ is the man, salvation is the plan. When we dance God's dance, He gives us another chance. God's work is efficient, His food is sufficient. Here's a part of my prayers: coach and play without swears. Thank you for listening.
Do you have any suggestions for how would you think a Catholic school what things should they include in their programming to embed the faith within the athletic programs? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, don't have competitions or practices Sunday mornings.
Okay, so don't play ball on Sundays.
They should be in church.
Right.
And if you have games on Sunday afternoons, have the teams go to mass together.
Okay.
That we do. The football team shows up, yes.
Okay, good. I'm trying to
Thank
think
you.
where there is an archbishop somewhere in the United States, I think it's New Orleans, where he said that the Catholic schools cannot have any competitions on Sunday. Just take it out of Sunday, put everything on Saturday, and whatever, because the pastors were complaining that it wasn't, they were losing kids and parents from Sunday Mass because of that.
It's okay in the afternoon.
Yeah, when there isn't any Mass.
And after they go to mass together
Yeah,
as a team.
yeah.
I used to get down to zero.
Did you? Did you? Sure. There you go.